Okay, picture this. You and a friend are hanging out, sitting right next to each other, just casually scrolling on your phones. You glance over, and their screen is literally an endless stream of cricket highlights. Then you look down at yours, and it's this heavy mix of local politics. Meanwhile, a third friend across the room is getting absolutely nothing but decadent, over-the-top food videos. It feels incredibly personal, right? Like the app just, completely understands you. But here's the core tension we're unpacking in today's explainer. These personalized feeds, they aren't just innocently organizing data. They are quietly, subtly shaping our actual reality. So let's dive right into this and explore exactly how algorithms control what you think.
I want you to really let this thought sink in for a second. The system feels neutral, but the experience it creates is not. We throw around the word addictive when talking about the internet all the time, but honestly, that phrasing is way too small for what's actually going down here. Recommendation systems are not just handy tools for convenience. They act as powerful filters on our attention. And well, attention is exactly where thought begins. When we use these platforms, it feels like we're looking out through a perfectly clear window at the world. But we're really not. We're looking through a highly specific, heavily curated lens.
So let's look under the hood. Section 1, the engine. What an algorithm actually does. It is super tempting to imagine algorithms as these tiny, hyper-intelligent minds sitting inside our phones, actively trying to understand our deepest human values. But they aren't. They are simply rule-based choosers. At its most basic level, an algorithm really just does three things. First, it collects signals, stuff like what you clicked, watched, paused on, or skipped. Second, it assigns value, basically guessing what's likely to matter to you next. And third, it presents an order. Think of it kind of like a super busy restaurant kitchen during the Friday night dinner rush. The kitchen isn't sitting there debating what food is philosophically the best in the world, right? It's just deciding what absolutely has to go out the door next, based on timing, pressure, and the ingredients on hand. And just like in that restaurant, the order in which things are served to you completely changes your experience of the whole meal.
And this brings us to a huge realization. A list is never just a list. Order totally shapes meaning. Just imagine walking into a local fruit market. If the absolute freshest, brightest fruit is laid out beautifully right at the front entrance, your attention is drawn instantly to it. But if that exact same fruit is shoved in wooden crates all the way at the back of the store, you'd probably completely ignore it. Nothing about the fruit itself actually changed, but the physical layout changed what felt available and obvious to you. While digital feeds do the exact same thing. When an algorithm decides to rank one post above another, it is literally turning visibility into significance.
Moving on to Section 2, the distortion. Why algorithms are not neutral mirrors. Because that order creates significance, we really have to understand the distortion at play here. Algorithms are not perfectly neutral mirrors just reflecting reality back at us. They selectively choose what gets to be seen based on highly specific goals. Let's break down what these systems are actually optimizing for. An algorithm never asks, hey, what is the objective truth? Instead, it asks, what should this person see next according to the specific rule I've been given? If the system's goal is attention, it favors content that holds you longer. If the goal is relevance, it serves up stuff similar to what you already like. Speed, it wants easy-to-process content. If it's popularity, it pushes what everyone else is clicking on. And if the goal is emotion, it aggressively favors content that triggers strong, immediate reactions. The whole system literally sacrifices a neutral presentation of the truth just to hit these specific metrics. And that is exactly why no two people on Earth experience the exact same digital world. Now, the main reason algorithms operate this way is that they actually have massive blind spots. An algorithm doesn't know the rich context of your daily life, and it definitely cannot perfectly distinguish a deep truth from a total falsehood. So what does it do? It relies on proxies. A proxy is just a signal that stands in for something way more complex. It's kind of like judging how good a restaurant is just by looking at how crowded it is from the street. Sometimes that proxy is a pretty good guess, but often it completely misses the deeper reality of the situation. All right, Section 3, the mental path. How repetition shapes your mind. I want you to think of your mind less like a neatly organized filing cabinet and more like a fresh patch of grass. If you keep walking the exact same route across that grass, day after day, eventually you carve a permanent dirt path, right? Well, this leads to a pretty dangerous cognitive vulnerability for us. Our brains struggle to distinguish between familiarity and truth. We use familiarity as a massive cognitive shortcut. When an algorithm keeps showing you the same type of content, your mind unconsciously assumes, well, why would this keep popping up if it wasn't incredibly relevant or true? The wild thing is, the algorithm doesn't need to know a single thing about your core beliefs.
It just keeps tossing certain ideas back onto your screen, and your brain simply mistakes that constant repetition for actual objective importance. This repetition builds some seriously powerful psychological expectations long before we ever stop to logically evaluate the information. There are three main ways this happens. First, if a topic keeps repeating, we just naturally feel like it must be the most urgent thing happening in the world. Second, if a specific viewpoint repeats, we automatically assume, wow, everyone must be thinking this. And third, if an angry or outraged tone constantly repeats, we assume that's just the normal tone of the entire public conversation. The system rarely forces you to draw a specific conclusion, but it absolutely prepares the ground on which your conclusions are formed. It creates this narrowed, completely false consensus of the world around you. Which brings us to Section 4, the feedback loop, emotion and amplification. That narrowed view we just talked about, it gets even more extreme when we enter the feedback loop. This loop is basically a dangerous partnership between algorithmic sorting and your own human emotional reactions. You know that awful, deafening screech that happens when someone holds a microphone way too close to a speaker? Algorithms work exactly like that microphone. Let's say you're scrolling on your couch after dinner and you see a clip about some local political controversy. Because it's provocative, you pause for a second to watch it. Maybe you even check the comments. Boom, the algorithm's output just triggered a human reaction. The platform interprets your tiny 2-second pause as deep, genuine interest. So what does it do? It violently narrows your feed. The loop makes the signal stronger and stronger. Suddenly, way more clips from that exact same angle appear. And this single, isolated issue goes from being just one topic among thousands to feeling like the absolutely central, most urgent crisis on the planet. Here's the thing. Emotionally charged content travels so much faster simply because it is incredibly easy to react to. If a post makes you angry, shocked, or even just amused, you are going to pause, share, or drop a comment. And those are the exact signals the system is totally starving for. It's a pretty sobering reality, actually. Calm, nuanced ideas are always going to struggle against loud, simple ones in these systems. Not because the loud ideas are better, and definitely not because they're truer, simply because calm information creates fewer immediate signals for the machine to measure. It's really that simple. And finally, Section 5. The awakening, seeing the system clearly. So now that you can actually see this loop in action, you don't have to just be a passive receiver anymore. This right here is your core upgrade in digital literacy. You are no longer just mindlessly scrolling. You are now reading the actual system behind the scroll. People so often reduce the problem of modern technology to just, simple distraction or shortened attention spans. But honestly, that misses the mark entirely. The real underlying issue is that algorithms literally help define the mental defaults you return to every single day. Most of our thinking begins from what feels plausible and normal to us. When you finally understand that these systems are selectively amplifying content based on completely arbitrary proxy rules, you can start to separate the actual content from the system that produces its general feel. So, I want to leave you with this provocative final thought. The very next time you open an app and begin to swipe or scroll, I don't want you to just ask, what is this algorithm showing me? Instead, I want you to ask yourself, what mental path is this teaching my mind to walk? Are you actually being guided by evidence, or are you just being guided by repetition and emotional signals? Because the second you start asking that question, you are no longer being steered blindly. You have the power to critically evaluate every single scroll, every click, and ultimately every thought you let into your mind.